Welcome back, everybody, to Isles Den, Episode 8. Today, we are joined by Stefen Rosner, founder of the Elmonters, filling us in live from Buffalo at the NHL Draft. Stefen, how are we doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Always a pleasure talking with you, man.
Yes, sir. So we're gonna dive right into it. We're gonna go over a few things, some crazy sports books odds for the Islanders for next season. A couple of guys on my trade board that are still left. We'll go over pick 13, and then we'll be taking your questions. But just wanted to start. The other day, the Islanders were definitely very quiet, and the rest of the league was very loud.
Was not, yes.
For about almost 3 years, I have been eyeing the perfect winger for Barzal, for Horvat, Jordan Kyrou, and off the board, he went to a division rival. It was like the perfect storm and had to piss me off. And I wasn't happy about it. But, life goes on and it's not the end of the world. But Stefen, here's where I need your realism. So part of the reason for my disappointment is at the trade deadline, the Islanders parted ways with the 29th overall pick, the third round selection from this year, and a goaltender prospect. I believe Gildoff is his name, mid-tier prospect. And I think the reason I was frustrated is at the deadline, I was okay with standing pat or giving this team like a true upgrade in the top 6 to help with the goal scoring deficiencies. And I worded the tweet a little bit wrong. The assets, calling them similar, that might have been a stretch. I will admit that. I will own it. I won't delete the tweet. But the frustration stands for me because I feel like if that's what we had to up the price to, keeping your first round pick at 29 and instead giving up the 13th overall pick, throwing in a winger comparable to McMichael, like a Holmstrom, like a Heineman, and maybe that third once again, like I would have been willing to do that in about a second. But do you think that gets it done?
I think Holmstrom would have to be in it immediately. And I wouldn't compare Holmstrom with Heineman. I think Holmstrom's a tough player to discuss because I think last year too, when the Islanders were trying to move back into the first round before the Dobson deal and everything like that to maybe get fourth, like I think Utah called about Holmstrom. I don't think the Islanders are willing to do that. They value this guy a lot. And I think we've seen it. Third line player, he shows that when he's on the third line, he can play second line. But when you put him on the second line or in the top 6, he deviates away from his game. That makes him so good. We know he has to shoot more, but looking at what they just got for Kyrou, and he'd have to waive to go to Washington. I think he would have waived to come to the Islanders. I have no reason to think he would not. It's like, you have to give up a big piece. McMichael, I know he had a down year, was a big piece. Now, that being said, the Capitals, they're trying to figure out the life after Ovechkin. Kyrou makes a lot of sense there. And I think the Islanders, Kyrou been a great move for them, but you talk about to the deadline where they wanted top prospects. And Mathieu Darche made it clear that Eklund and Anderson were not available. I know that the Blues had interest in Danny Nelson, Cole Eiersman, and of course those guys, but Darche also made it clear that he wasn't really interested in moving prospects that he thought could be at the NHL level in a couple of years. Now, we know what happened at the deadline. He took a risk going and getting 3 veterans. One, you look at Susie and you say, you know what, maybe the third round pick was a little too much, but they desperately needed a right. And they tried every right side defenseman and left side defenseman in that there's no right side defenseman in the prospect pool. Left side defenseman in the prospect pool to fill a Romanov hole, and no one really took advantage of it. George, if he was healthy, probably gets that job. Susie Bill doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. But you look at the Shen and Palat with term, and I think that's where a lot of fans are mad, saying, well, why are they not doing anything now? They had no problem doing that then. Had they not get Kyrou, like they could have used those picks, whatever, like you just talked about, right? And I think with Kyrou, things changed from the deadline to the summer. Again, I don't think he was actively wanting to be moved. I don't think the Blues were truly actively looking to trade him, but I think at some point they knew that was going to happen. Could they have gotten more at the deadline? Probably. Things change in the summer and all that stuff. But yeah, I think Holmstrom would have had to be involved, plus picks and prospects. And again, too, it's the fit. When the Capitals came calling, maybe Kyrou was over the moon and said, that's where I want to be. Like, make it work. You see that happen a lot. Look at Brady Tkachuk in Ottawa. He wanted to go to Florida. That pigeonholes you so bad if you're Ottawa, where I thought they got a pretty solid return.
Me too.
For Brady. I mean, again, they didn't have to trade Brady either, the same way they didn't have to trade Kyrou under contract, things like that. But just look at the Kyrou situation, and I think all these deals are always slight overpays. But it seems like he wanted to be a capital, and when that happens, it makes it easier for trades to go down. I think that Capitals deal up a lot, but they look at, again, you're losing out on Ovechkin. You need a goal scoring winner that scores 30 plus goals. But yeah, it's interesting. Darche calculated risk. It failed. If the Islanders make the playoffs, you look at all the moves they made and you say, you know what? They got Schaefer into the playoffs in his first year. They got Rich into the playoffs. They didn't waste the year of Sorokin. The problem now with a lot of Islander fans is you didn't stand pat at the deadline when you probably should have. And now everyone's getting stronger. The Capitals are getting stronger. Teams in the East are getting stronger. You're doing nothing. And then it brings you to your FanDuel or your thing where the Islanders are at the bottom. So I think if we segue to that, that's probably a perfect spot. And yeah, I know you're going to ask about it. So let's just go through it.
Yeah. I mean, so the other day, I'm in New York and, gambling apps, they're legal here. And I was just going through seeing, okay, like, what are the Islanders to make the playoffs next season out of just pure curiosity? If you're listening on Apple and Spotify, I have the graphic pulled up. The Islanders are plus 2,000 and tied with the Rangers for last to potentially win the Metropolitan. And I don't think they're going to win the division, but just being that low in terms of expectancy to make the playoffs did kind of surprise me. And this is where I'll get a little bit positive for us. This team being in that last place slot, I think is a little bit deceiving of the roster. I just find when you have Horvat and Barzal both playing center in the top six, you have two of who I think are some of the best left-handed defensemen in the NHL with Pelech, with Schaefer. You have Sorokin in net. This team had two players that got Hart Trophy votes last season. And I understand there's a lot of variance within goaltending, but something that does inspire me that we won't see that much regression, if at all, from Sorokin is the level of high danger shots he faced in the Patrick Roy system against the Pete DeBoer system that we will see in place next year and got a little taste of at the end of the season. I think the floor is a little bit too high to be in last place in the odds. And, it could be an overreaction from all of the off-season movement. But, there's players on this team that I expect to take even more steps, like Simon Holmstrom, if management is really gambling on him that he's not worth throwing in for a Jordan Kyrou, for some other players on the market. Like, okay, the Islanders clearly see something in this player that like he is due to, become that 50, 60 point winger. You've Cal Ritchie, who I think is going to get even better. And believe it or not, this is truly coming from my mouth. I think that Braden Shen on left wing, as opposed to playing center, actually gives him a chance to be a lot more helpfully impactful next season if Barzal's in the middle. So I do have some faith there. And yeah, I find it to be a little bit crazy that they're ranked so far below teams like the Blue Jackets, the Flyers, the Penguins. And, it might be a little bit too much respect for the Devils for me because, man, they fool me every single year.
Yeah, listen, I don't think the Islanders are finishing last in the division or second to last in the division. I think they'll probably be in a similar spot to where they were this year. And again, you look back, if Palmieri and Romanov don't get hurt, I mean, do the Islanders do damage in the playoffs? No. Do they make it? Probably. I mean, they collapsed. Let's be clear here. They collapsed. They were in a playoff spot. It wasn't a safe spot, but they were in a playoff spot. And looking at the summer, I think there's so many variables. Is Victor Eklund making this team? Who is backing up Sorokin? You mentioned goalie troubles. Right now, I believe the plan is Varley. Like, he's going to be the backup. I think they'll bring in an insurance policy. I don't think Riddick is interested at all in taking a two-way deal to go to Hamilton. So I'm sure he could find a backup job if not brought back. But major question mark in goal. You have a major question mark in defense in terms of, is Tony DeAngelo coming back? Do the Islanders move Pelech? Which, again, we could talk about that in a little bit. But a lot of variables in the forward group. Outside of I don't think you don't even have a top six set yet, unless you're running back the Shen, Ritchie, Barzal line and having Barzal at center. And maybe, the one at the end of the year, Eklund, Horvat, Holmstrom is your top line. I don't know if that's the case. You have Palmieri coming back too. Then you have the variable about Anders Lee and DeBoer being the coach. So I think a lot of this book stuff is more of, here other teams have a lot more answers than the Islanders do. A lot of the question marks could turn into exclamation points for the Islanders, or it could go the other way. But yeah, I wouldn't read too much into that. I think like you, they're going to be better than that. Again, I don't know if they're a playoff team, but they're going to be hovering around that. We'll see. There's a lot of time between now and the start of the season. But when you put a lot of faith in a guy like an Eklund, or Schaefer even doing the same thing he did this past year, which I think he's capable of doing, I can see why books are weary on things going well for the Islanders. But that being said, like, again, you have Sorokin as well. I don't think there's any situation where the Islanders would be last in the division with Sorokin in goal. I don't think it's impossible.
I don't see it either. I don't see it if Schaefer's healthy, if they start the season with Barzal and Horvat. And I guess we could touch on it quickly, but there was just noise that they were taking calls and simply seeing what the market was and accepting those phone calls on Barzal, where I guess as opposed to Schaefer, you wouldn't even take the call. But it seems like that noise has died down a little bit and that he will be here to start the season. And yeah, if they have like those 5 or 6 high-end players that they do have, I find that the ceiling, while it might not be that high, is much higher than the floor of last place potentially.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it's also a bad thing for the Islanders to, depending what they do this summer, to take a step back, take 3 steps forward. Like if they move on from players, not saying Barzal, but if they move on from other players and say, you know what, Anders Lee's walking, and rather than going and getting a player to replace Lee, we're going to play Eklund in a middle 6 role, and whether he struggles or not, we're going to let him. Like, look at Schaefer. He played it, Schaefer struggled. They, of course, could have sent him back to juniors. They weren't obviously going to do that, but, there might be a time, maybe it's at the deadline after this year if the Islanders struggle where they sell off, where, hey, just play the young guys. Like, I think, yes, you want to sell tickets. I think Islander fans want to be competitive. I understand that with Schaefer on his ELC. But if the future really is as bright as the Islanders hope, I think Islander fans would also appreciate playing young guys over paying veterans and seeing what those young guys can do. And you never know. I mean, years ago, for Yankee fans that are watching, the Yankees traded players and they called up Aaron Judge, Gary Sanchez, all these young guys, and they went on a tear. You just never know. So I think for the Islanders, and it's something that they'll discuss, I'm sure, in free agency, is do we sign the vet? Do we play the youngster instead and just get them that experience? Because the Islanders, yes, they have a core they have to focus on now, but with Aitchison, with Eklund, with Prokhorov, with Danny Nelson, with Cole Eisman, like, there's a lot of talent that in 3 years could be on your NHL lineup, and you have to have places for them. But the Barzal thing quickly, pretty much what I think happened in this report is 2 different things were merged together. The Islanders wanted clear cap space, and the fact that the Ottawa Senators called, or that he was taking calls on Barzal. So the Barzal thing first, a GM's job, and Darche always says this, is my job is to listen. If I don't listen, it's not my job. Yes, you hang up the phone call if they ask about Schaefer, but you already answered the phone call. So I think what happened here is Darche is taking calls on Barzal, as he should. This is a guy that is a center, a wing, trying to plan around him, $9.15 million cap hit. Talented guy that could bring you back probably a lot. However, do I think the Islanders are interested in moving on from Barzal, the guy that, DeBoer didn't come in and join this team and didn't trade away their most dynamic forward. DeBoer is a win-now coach, but also has this developmental role that he's had with the Wyatt Johnsons, with the Thomas Harleys. The things he did in Dallas have been fantastic, but he developed those guys while they were also competitive. I think that's the plan here, is take a team that is playoff. They're a team that is able to make the playoffs. But while they're making the playoffs, maybe going on a one last run with this group, let's see what happens. While that's happening, develop these young guys at the NHL level. That way, in a couple of years, when those older guys fade out, Victor Eklund becomes a Wyatt Johnson, or those guys become a Robertson, right? And I think that's why DeBoer is here. He's the biggest key to everything for the Islanders. I think that's your biggest acquisition you probably made, if we're being honest, as of today. I think DeBoer is the biggest acquisition. Yes, Romanov back, Palmieri back. Maybe you get some added depth, but like DeBoer is the key to everything. Everyone can say, well, a coach can only do so much. Look at Barry Trotz. This is a team that was severely flawed, and they don't make back-to-back Eastern Conference finals without Trotz. Other coach could have been there. It's not happening. So I think the same thing with DeBoer here is that, yeah, DeBoer can't play the games, but you're talking about taking a group that is flawed and getting them to be the best version of themselves. DeBoer's the guy. But yeah, Barzal stuff, like you take the call, you talk about it, you see what's out there, you gauge the market. Obviously, if there was an offer that was ridiculous, I'm making this up, 3 first round, like something ridiculous, you're like, okay, I'll make that deal. Again, too, Barzal is a 22-man no trade clause, and I believe a lot of those teams are teams that have forwards tied up in their top 6 that couldn't afford Barzal anyway, which is part of what agents do that for. Hey, I'm not getting a full no trade, right? I'm putting teams on here that you just can't trade to anyway. Like the 22 teams, the teams that are not on his list are teams that are tied up in their top 6 and don't have the financial room to take him on. So it's more of like a full no trade for Barzal at this point. But yeah, if the right offer is there, you got to think about it. But as of right now, I would be shocked if Barzal wasn't on the line to start the season.
Yeah. always interesting to figure out like the trade lists. Do you know if those get updated annually or if it's like right when you first sign?
I believe whenever it's kicking in, you add it in, but then every year by a certain date, I think you're able to update it.
Okay.
It's obviously before July 1st. Every year, like has Barzal, like for a fact, I think Buffalo is talking about it. Like teams are starting to take them off the no trade list. So I'm not exactly at the specific date. I know what happened with the Dadonov stuff with Ottawa. Like they said he never submitted the list or whatever, and they had it, some BS like that. But yeah, you could definitely update it. Excuse me. But right now, again, Barzal also loves Long Island. Barzal is really close with Schaefer. I'd be shocked.
Yeah, those are some key points as to why I still want him here. But shifting gears more to the trade market of what's left in this trade market, I wanted to give you three players. Jordan Spence in Ottawa. I'm a little bit skeptical if they're actually looking to move him, and it's because he had a good season, and it might be like a Barzal situation to a lesser extent of let's just see what's out there because he's not a perfect player. He's pretty small, and I've actually watched him give up some. I've watched him have some tough moments, including against the Islanders this year. Valeri Nichushkin is probably the one veteran winger that does interest me just because he has the ability to play in the top six. And Colorado, a lot of their deals that they try to use to free up cap space, you might actually get some value in that trade and not have to give up what you think you'd have to give up because they're pretty desperate to have some salary cap. And lastly, is Elias Pettersson's name is still floating around. I know you saw my take on why it could be a good fit as to buying low being a good idea. But out of these three guys, what do you think it would cost, especially on the Spence one, because he's the youngest one and probably the one that makes them the most immediately better if replacing Tony DeAngelo. But yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on these guys.
Yeah, let's start with Spence. I think the 13th overall pick would be overblown for him. I think that'd be a lot. Maybe you get back some picks in that, maybe a third, or obviously the Islanders don't have a pick until round 4. But I like Spence as a player. He is small. He is a fit. He's young. It's more of like a Romanov deal, in my opinion. If you did that, the Islanders did that in 2022 with the 13th overall pick to get Romanov. But I think it'd be giving up a lot. Maybe you get something back. However, teams like Ottawa can kind of dictate, right? It is an overpay. But how badly do you want the player? For Ottawa's not in the same situation as a Colorado is, where they need to pay Cale Makar, right? They need to have the money to pay these guys. Could you get Nichushkin on a cheaper deal? Could it involve an Isaiah George? I know they're looking for left side defensemen. Isaiah George right now is, he's good enough to be on the NHL level, but is he going to be trusted with an everyday role? And I know he's only 24, but if he's not going to play in the NHL every day, is his value depreciating playing in the minors, given that he played at the NHL level? He didn't stick for some reason. Obviously, we know the injuries, but like it gets to become a problem where teams are saying, well, if this guy's an NHL ready defenseman, why is he back in the AHL and not getting an NHL chance? But yeah, I like Spence the player. I probably wouldn't trade the 13th overall pick for him this second unless you're getting stuff back. Maybe it's a package deal where maybe it's Spence and somebody else for the 13th pick and a 5th or something like that. Nichushkin, I said George. I think they want a left side defenseman. George and maybe a couple of picks probably do it. And then you mentioned Pettersson, and this is the interesting one because things have changed on the Pettersson front. A couple of years ago, Islanders probably would have been all in on Pettersson. The ask, though, was Barzal they love Dobson. Islanders weren't going to part ways with those guys. Obviously, you look back on what happened with Dobson. Maybe if they had known he wasn't going to sign, there's something to work out there. Doesn't happen, but the old regime wanted, if a team is acquiring Pettersson, they're giving back a player of similar caliber level, a top line center, maybe a middle line center, with picks and stuff like that. Well, things have changed since Ryan Johnson's taken over. He is now okay with getting picks and prospects for Pettersson, not the equivalent player because they're in a rebuild. That being said, he has a tremendously high cap hit. I think they would have to retain, 11.7 he's making?
11. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I just don't trust the player, to be honest. Again, not that the Islanders have the assets anymore either. They'd probably, they want picks and prospects. And the Islanders giving up an Aitchison and Eklund for Pettersson? No, because Pettersson haven't given you any reason to think that he could bounce back. Now, I think Pettersson needs a change of scenery. I think Carolina, who had been trying for him, would have been a really good spot. But again, I don't like knocking work ethic, but when work ethic starts to become a problem a lot in video and you're watching him play and the way he talks, it's like, well, I'll stay clear, especially when it's that big of a cap hit. Even at 50% retained, I'd stay clear. Again, I don't think the Islanders have the assets. Dude, I heard the St. Louis Blues are poking around. It would be funny if the 28th pick or 29th pick gets moved for him in some regard. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be really busy for the Islanders on the trade front. I think if they're going to get better, it would be via trade. But again, that would have been for Kyrou, a Robertson. I don't think Tuch, I heard one person told me that they were involved in Tuch, the Islanders. I doubt it. Makes no sense. Again, Marchman hitting the market. We'll talk in a second about guys that are hitting the free agent market. But I think for the Islanders, like I said, Pete DeBoer is probably your biggest acquisition. The names that I would have thought the Islanders would have tried for, again, I'm sure Darche tried and didn't get the guys. Like Kyrou would have been the guy for me. And if you're not going to get the Kyrou or you're not going to get the Robertson, which I'm sure the Islanders aren't going to get the Robertson, they are not involved with Matthew Knies and stuff. So yeah, I don't see it happening from the trades. I think if anything, it's maybe depth signings and free agency. And if not, it's just trust the young guys, trust the new coach, and trust that, this team healthier is going to find a way. Tough sell, Islander fans, I know, and they don't want to hear it. And I hear it in my DMs and in the comments, but I'm just trying to be realistic here. Like you look at the assets they have, you look at the young players they have, they don't want to block. I just think you're going to see a lot more of a similar roster this fall, unless it's just more of an influx of young talent. I really do.
Yeah. Like I think the plan, as you kind of outlined before, is I think this next season is going to look a lot like last season where, they're hovering around that playoff bubble, but the true competitive contending window, I think really begins when some of these contracts do expire and when Eklund, Aitchison, Yzerman, when these guys are all starting to really break into the league and you still got Barzal and Horvat in their primes. Like I think that's really where the window opens. So I do expect more of a quieter summer, and we can touch on free agency real quick. Like I don't even really look so much at these lists, and the only free agent that I can see making some sense would be Rasmus Andersson for a right-handed shot defenseman. But I just don't see them doing it because I think his price is going to be too high. And that's kind of why Nichushkin's on this list, because he is older, but you won't have to pay a first-round pick, and you probably won't have to pay you definitely won't have to pay one of your 3 or 4 best prospects. So like that realistically feels like what the price Darche would be willing to pay. So with free agency, I've heard Marchman's name. I'm a little bit like indifferent on it just because I see a middle six player. I see a middle six winger. I think he is a good player, but not one that I want to be locked into for the next 6 or 7 years.
Well, that's the thing, right? Marchman has a relationship with Pete DeBoer from their days in Dallas. He's a player that not only would take Lee's spot, but I think he'd actually play with Barzal. I think he's talented enough where, he doesn't get a lot of credit for his offensive capabilities. I think he could be that kind of guy, but it's about the term. This is a guy like Anders Lee. It's a perfect example here is Anders Lee got the bag. Obviously he's not going to get $7 million annually on the open market, but he already got his big contract. Marchman, who's 31, hasn't had that. And I think in free agency, this is his last chance to get that big deal. I think there will be a team that offers him a long-term deal at, $6 million plus. So I think that puts the Islanders out, but I think the Islanders will have a conversation, and to Pete DeBoer again knows the player. Hey, would you have any interest going short-term? Or if we were to go long-term, how low would you go? And again, I don't think he ultimately ends up here, but I do think he's a guy that could fit alongside Barzal. And you mentioned Rasmus Andersson. I think it's going to be too much. One guy I look at defense-wise, if D'Angelo does walk, is Nick Blankenburg. He's coming off a really cheap, I think it was league min last year. And he split time between Nashville and Colorado. Now you see McFarland go to Nashville and just try to take all the Colorado Avalanche players. And I believe that there's probably some interest in Nashville in bringing Blankenburg back. However, I like his game a lot. Right side defenseman, wouldn't be too expensive. I think he could play on that line with a Pelech and stuff. But it's so many question marks too. Like, do the Islanders think about moving Pelech? I don't think so. I don't think he's being shopped. I don't think anything like that. But the Islanders have so many middle sixes. So we're looking at, all right, if you're going to add a middle six player, one, will it block a prospect? And two, is someone already under contract on the team? You have to pay those guys. We've talked about Duclair, or I've talked about Duclair a lot. But I think he's going to be moved. And you have guys like Engvall, and you guys like Shapanov, who's an RFA, and you have McLean under contract, you have Cizikas under contract, you have Pajot under contract. Are you going to play Shen on the third line? Like, it is crowded, dude. And if you don't clean it up, there's no real ability to add. I mean, you have the cap space, but you don't have the roster space. And I was thinking about Shapanov before. I saw that Hendrix Lapierre got traded from the Capitals to Pittsburgh. And I just wondered, with Shapanov is, where do you, I mean, I could ask you, Jack, obviously you watch as much as I do. Like, do you see a spot where Shabanov fits into this lineup? Because if not, do you trade him and get something for him? He's going to file for, I'm sure he's going to file for salary arbitration, same way Sipakov did. I know that at the deadline, the Islanders had talks with Shabanov's camp, and Shabanov's camp was very keen on, if you're not going to play him, move him. You know, the Islanders signed Shabanov. He had so many teams interested, Utah, Philly, Rangers, and they chose the Island because they thought that was the best spot for him. But if he's not going to play, and maybe we don't know how DeBoer really, I mean, DeBoer told us he likes his game a lot, but it was one game and then he got hurt. Like, do you try to move Shabanov for anything? Even if you got a 3rd-round pick this year, the Islanders don't have that. You know, do you try to move Shabanov? Because if you bring him back, that's great. But you best be playing him because he doesn't belong in the press box. He needs to play. He has not played in the NHL. Obviously he played a little bit last year and got hurt, but that guy needs experience. And if you think he could be a top 6 weapon for you or a middle 6 weapon, he's got to play. But it's, you know, you have Pierre Engvall coming back healthy, and I talked to Engvall's camp, and he's going to be ready to go. So, like, yeah, you could put him in the minors and stuff, but it's crowded. So unless you're bringing a guy that you think is going to be a major difference maker, like if they think Marchment could be a difference maker playing with Barzal, then you move guys out. But right now, again, it's not cap. It's roster spots. And the Islanders have to figure out between, which they've already been done now, July 1st throughout the summer, who does Pete DeBoer like? Who does Pete DeBoer not like? Submit that list. And if there are guys that he doesn't want to work with or doesn't think that would help the team, you got to find a way to move them, because you could start waiving players, of course, and things like that. But not everything gets buried in the minors. Even though the money changed with the new CBA and you could bury more, like Engvall's still going to be on the books. It's just not going to be as much. So I think Darche and the whole staff, DeBoer, have to figure out who's part of this group, because I think that impacts who you go after in July 1. But if they go after anybody, and again, teams are different year after year, I'm sure they'll sign one player, a depth guy, but there's not a lot of options, which makes guys like a Marchment or guys like Anders Lee, which I don't think, but Marchment, like, probably gets the bag this summer, because if once free agency begins, Marchment's your top forward free agent. He's going to get paid. So there's a lot the Islanders have to figure out a lot, but I think it comes more down to moving players just because of roster spots as opposed to cap, because the cap's not an issue unless you need the money.
Yeah, I'm thinking with Shabanov, I actually do think he comes back and gets a real opportunity, and it kind of has to do with DeBoer's willingness right away to scratch Andre Palat. I think Shabanov showed just enough in that rookie year that he's worth maybe, seeing what he's got for another season. But then I think about, as you just said, they only have one pick in the first 3 rounds this year. I think about maybe a former head coach of Anthony Duclair and Shabanov, maybe you can actually get a third. Maybe you can you're probably not getting a second. Maybe you can get a third for those two. Right. But when it comes to roster space, my best guess, I think Anthony Duclair, I think it's just over here. And I've started to think that even though it's a different coach, the Patrick Waugh scratching in February after he just performed his best month with the team, I was thinking, okay, like this is just done. And then he comes back at the end of the season. And I don't know, that game he played, I think it was against Buffalo, and his play on the ice that night, like it wasn't even that it was that bad. He just looked like, from a fan's point of view, he almost looked disinterested. I think that the Islanders will take the L on that one and just admit to themselves, like, we got to move on from this guy. He's not mentally here. He doesn't enjoy being here. I think it's just over with him. So I do think that does open up a spot or two. As for Engvall, I don't see where they put him. I just see DeBoer kind of evaluating everybody at camp, and I honestly see him making the team.
You see Engvall making the team?
I do. I think he will make the team.
I also, that's what it comes down to is Engvall making the team over an Eklund, or is McLean being waived, like all those things. Oh, but to go back to your Duclair point, I'd be shocked if he was on this team come the fall. Now, it's hard to move money. It always is hard to move money. I look at the San Jose Sharks. If they're drafting Stenberg, they just traded Eklund, so iffy there. But like San Jose, he's got a good relationship with Greer there. He's played there before. I think if they went and got a defenseman and they wanted a middle 6 forward, he'd go back there. Again, he also has a modified no trade, right?
Yep.
After July 1, it's full right now. So I know the Islanders did try to move him during the season. It didn't work out. I believe it was in the Palat deal. He wouldn't waive, which is understandable. He was playing at that point. You're talking about the hot streak. I think that was when he was playing really well. But Duclair is a guy that it just hasn't worked. We talked to him at the end of the season. It was much of, cliches and stuff what you'd expect from a player like that. But, like Druin, like Darche moved on from Drouin after he knew that he had to. And Duclair's the same way, except Duclair had a full no trade. It's really hard to do. Once July 1st hits, it's modified. I think he's dealt. I just don't, there's no point in having him like a guy like that sitting in the press box. And if you're not going to play him, he's got to move. And listen, there are teams that are going to need depth forwards. It's always a good thing to have. And Duclair's, you could argue and say Duclair isn't a fit anywhere. That's why he keeps moving. But on the flip side, it's like Michael Grabner. Enough teams wanted him, whether it was for 1 year or 2 year, where they saw value in what he brings. Like Duclair is a guy that can score 20 goals. He's fast. He's mobile. He can be on a power play. He's just going to, and to be honest, when he was that stretch where he was playing really well with the Islanders, he was probably staying in the lineup because he was playing sound defensively on that third line. So again, I think Duclair moves. It comes down to me with Shabanov is if you're going to bring him back, give him a shot. And if they do, great. Like, good. You should do that. You should give younger guys that have that offensive potential that he has and play him in a top six with a Barzal or with an Eklund or with a Ritchie or those guys. I just don't know, again, what is Shabanov's appetite to be back? He could request a trade if he wants to and go to a spot like the Rangers. I'm sure he could be in their top six.
Yeah.
He'd probably have a ton of fun in Utah. Philly would be a good spot. So, again, it's more about the opportunity and what DeBoer is going to allow, because it's a hard sell for a guy like Shabanov, where you just saw what happened his first year. He was unable to really get a feel. I mean, he played and got hurt. That's on him for not being able to stay healthy, and it happens. But why am I going to run that back if I'm not going to get the chance to prove myself? I mean, I chose to come to the NHL for a reason to live out my dream there and do that, and come to a spot where there's a lot of Russian players. It's a good fit. But if we're going to get a repeat of year one, why on earth am I staying? That's where my mindset would be at if I'm him. That being said, the owner can say, listen, you got to earn it. And he does. He has to find a way to take less hits and get up and put himself in better spots. But there's talent there. There's absolutely talent there. And if he can figure it out at the NHL level and play a little faster, play a little more north-south than east-west, which Russians like to do, he could be really effective, especially for a team that, again, you're not getting that bona fide goal scorer this summer. You're getting younger. He does fit the Schaefer timeline. He fits the Eklund timeline. He fits the Ritchie timeline. It'd be a slam dunk if he worked out. He just has to get that chance. He has to take the opportunity that he gets.
Yeah, I think those are good points. I just don't see them moving off of him really, no matter what. Like, he can request a trade all he wants, but
yeah, right.
I think he'll play out. I think he'll play out next season with the team, and we'll see how that goes. I just have a hard time with DeBoer being satisfied with, I don't think he would rather Engvall, Duclair. I think he'd rather see, literally in DeBoer's first week, he was already trying to see Victor Eklund play. So I just think there's more interest from him with the younger players.
Agree completely. But it comes down to, though, if Darche can move those guys, Engvall you could bury in Hamilton, but let's say he can move Duclair, which I don't believe is true. I think he will. Yeah. Are you going to have Duclair sit in the press box making the money that he's making? I just think
no way.
But does DeBoer want to feel like he has to play? Like, that's the other thing with Patrick Waugh is, at times he was forced to play guys. Remember that first press conference when they called up Youngville from Bridgeport and they signed Matt Martin from his PTO to the 1 year deal? I think Waugh said, like, this is the team that Lou gave me, and like something like that.
Yeah.
Like, there are coaches that don't, again, it's a business. The players are contracted. There's obviously out across the NHL, I'm sure every coach, that one player that's like, I don't want him in my lineup, but I have to play him because the team's giving him money. I think we see that a lot. I just have a hard time with the issues that Duclair had. Like, I'm pretty sure Duclair would be open to waiving to go anywhere as long as he's going to play. And I think there are a lot of teams where that could be the case. Again, he's talented. It's just got to be in the right spot for him. And he's got to mentally figure it out too, because obviously what he went through this last year and a half, 2 years, it wasn't great, and it certainly impacted his play.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been tough for him. I don't forget those passive aggressive shots from Patrick Waugh to Lou at the time. Yeah, kind of crazy drama for the Islanders there in the Lou era, which we did not see very often. But do you think there will be any drama at pick 13? My guess is the Islanders are just going to take the best player available. And I hope that it's Tynan Lawrence. That's kind of my pick. That's my guy from BU. I think that they need a little bit more at the center position. And for the rest of the draft, though, I wouldn't care if they literally every single pick, if it was a right-handed shot defenseman, just take him.
Every pick.
Every other pick, just take him. Because
4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, just do it. I mean, it's I don't know if it's funny, but you look at the right side depth in the pipeline. And after Scott Mayfield, in terms of like prospects that are there, Thomas Machu.
That's it.
That's the next. That's crazy. And again, you could fill in with stuff like you have Ethan Bear back. You could bring back someone. You could sign depth players to have in terms of like, hey, a right side defenseman went down. Let's call somebody up. But in terms of pipeline, when the Pulaks and the Mayfields are eventually gone, who do you have? So yeah, I think they have to go right shot at some point in this draft. Now listen, the 13th pick, best player available is very subjective because what does that mean? Every scout has a different best player available. Now it's about who they collectively think is the right guy for that spot. So you mentioned Tynan Lawrence. Ethan Belchins is a guy that is a big Schaefer guy, big body power forward. Like if I was Ottawa, I kind of look at him as your Kachuk replacement in how they play the game. You look at anyone that falls out of the true top 10. I like Wyatt Johnson a lot. I know he's not going to be in the top 10. I like not Wyatt Johnson.
I was going to say.
Wyatt Cullen, excuse me. I like Wyatt Cullen a lot. I talked to him at the Combine. He had fun in the Islanders interview. He's a big Jack Hughes guy, so I think if the Devils got him, that's probably how that would work out. But yeah, you have the other guy too, Gustafson, the defenseman. I know he's a left side as well. But yeah, I think best player available, you do that at 13. Ryan Lynn's really interesting. He's a player that a lot of players that could be at number 13, but also some scouts say he could fall to 20, 25 range. This is a guy that is a smaller defenseman, right side defenseman though, really smart, tremendous IQ. He's going to Denver. He'll play for Carl. Really good spot for him. I think it's something that could really complement Schaefer really, really well. The question is if that's a player the Islanders do want. Daxton Rudolph's another guy. If he falls, I would go after him. Verhoff, we're hearing, seems to be dropping for some crazy reason. If he fell to 13, you take that and run. But I like Ryan Lynn as an example of if we like that player, we like someone that's maybe in the more of the 18 to 25 range. Do we trade back and try to get a second round pick? So I think the Islanders go best player available, but if not, I see them doing that and, trading back in the first round with a team or two. Maybe they move a Duclair in that kind of deal to take some salary off the books and open up a raw spot and get a Ryan Lynn, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 and recoup a second round pick. I like Ryan Lynn a lot. He's probably a little too rich at 13 because we could talk about, here's your top 12, whatever. Someone always falls. Look last year. I mean, Victor Eklund was in the top 10 for a lot of drafts. And then everyone started taking big body players. They looked at Eklund and said, we can't do that, and drop. Islanders get him at 6, and even Aitchison, he fell. You look at Yzerman the year before that, he fell. He could have been a top 10 player, and they got the Islanders at 20, right? So I think for the Islanders, obviously, if they do move the pick, it won't be until they're on the clock. I do think they use the pick. I think they'll pick the best player available. And like you said, the Islanders can come everywhere, and their center depth isn't as deep as I think people do think. So, yeah, they'll have a ton of great options. I know everyone says the draft after 10 kind of dips. Some people say after 13 it dips. Listen, I respect a lot of what these draft gurus and these prospect analytics, holy, it's been a long morning. Prospect guys do, but it's such a tough business with guessing how these go. No one ever gets it truly right. Even the top 4, we have no idea. McKenna 1, Stenberg 2, but it sounds like Mal Holscher doesn't want to play with his dad, or that's not the way they're going to go. So how does that impact everything? And if this guy Verhoff keeps falling, I don't know why he keeps falling, but he keeps falling. It impacts the Islanders. Could the Islanders try to move up? Now, I don't think they have the assets to do that. Those were kind of moved already. But yeah, I think the Islanders will pick at 13. Could be your Lawrence guy. Could be Wyatt. Could be Lynn. Again, really, who knows? It truly depends on the Islanders scouts. And to be honest, the Islanders scouts last handful of years, dating back to 2023 when they took Danny Nelson and Quinn Finley in that draft, I believe, they've had a really good draft. So whoever they think at number 13 can be that guy. I mean, Darche is going to go with it, right? I know he has the final say, but yeah, I don't think it's any oh my God, the Islanders are going to grab someone at 20 that they could have gotten, at 13, or someone falls from the top 6 and the Islanders get them. I think it'll be pretty straightforward what we've seen. But any of the names that you mentioned, like Tynan Lawrence is a perfect fit. I would say Lawrence, Belchis, Cullen, and I would even put Lynn on the back burner. Those 3, if they're available, and Gustafson maybe, those are your guys. But if not, and the Islanders really do like someone deeper down, of course, they should trade back and recoup some assets.
Yeah, I got to say, the Scouts have been on a pretty damn good run. The trade back and then still selecting Cole Yzerman a few years ago, Danny Nelson. Even when was Simon Holmstrom drafted? Was it 2019, 2019?
I mean, look at Isaiah George. George is a 4th round pick. in 2022. Yeah. They actually used, when they traded Romanov to Montreal, they got back, when they got Romanov and a pick back, and that pick became Isaiah George.
You see that, like, the trade itself, some people think is very questionable, but when you add Isaiah George into that trade's a win because you get two.
In general too, like Romanov's not going to be as bad as he was to start last year. It's not possible. He was terrible. And he also, I think he was hurt from the get-go and re-aggravated things. Like Darche didn't sign him to a long-term deal worth $6.25 million to be a bottom-pairing defenseman. That just did not happen. So look back at the trade. I get it. I know when Nazar is done, I know Dak was solid in the playoffs for them, but I'd struggled to be healthy and everything. But yeah, I don't think it was a bad trade for the Islanders to make at the time. They needed defensemen. Montreal needed to get rid of Romanov. They had too many people there. And I think it's a move that I think Romanov is going to be better. And again, if you ever moved Pelech, you need a second pairing defenseman. You're paying Romanov to be that guy. But fans are going to fan. That's how it works in this industry.
With Romanov, I think DeBoer can be a really big help. I mean, I remember Pelech, Pollock. I remember these guys before Barry Trotz came in, and like you would have never guessed what they became and where this team was playing a few years later. So I do think that could help. But yeah, I know it was really hard for Romanov last year. When I was talking to my dad about it the other day, and he is saying that Romanov, my dad, who never complains about any player really, unless he absolutely has to, he was like, he just looked completely lost. I was like, wow, that's when you know that you're not just being negative, and that he really did struggle. And playing with Tony DeAngelo for him, I don't think was the right partner. And these are little things that I expect to be cleaned up with Pete DeBoer with him. So definitely a rough year, but I think he will be better next year, like you said.
I agree.
So all right, last little segment here. We did some Twitter questions for this episode. The Reddit community, I'll get you guys back the next episode. Wanted this one to be a little bit shorter, but I'll take it away here. First question from Dom. What's the percentage chance the Islanders' right side to start next season is Ryan Pollock, Tony DeAngelo, and Scott Mayfield? You could start with this one.
Yeah, percentage-wise, I think it's very high. I'll say definitely over 50%. Now, DeAngelo is interesting because it's been so quiet. And if I'm Tony DeAngelo's camp, I want term. Not saying it has to be long-term, but I want more than a one-year deal. I want around probably $4 million if I can get that, because he's coming off what? Was it 1.75?
Yep.
But he showed when he was out of the lineup how badly the Islanders just fell apart. Maybe if DeAngelo doesn't get hurt, the Islanders make the playoffs. Like they fell apart. Matthew Barzal saying, clearly we need him. And if I'm DeAngelo, I'm bringing all those messages and all the tweets and all the quotes to Darche and saying, this is how important that he is to your program. Now the question comes down to is, does DeBoer like the player? Can he coach him? But I ultimately think DeAngelo will be back. I think there's not really many more options. And I think for the Islanders, he showed how important he was. He also showed how important he was to Pelech. And if you're not moving Pelech, you need Pelech to be as good as he was this past year. And DeAngelo deserves a lot of credit for that. So I think the chances are really high. That's your right side to start the year. No question.
Yeah, I'm going to say 50% on the dot. I don't think it's above or below, just because, as you said, it's been really quiet there. And what that tells me is Darche is looking to upgrade that position, or maybe just change it up, right? Because, you miss the playoffs, you collapse. And I just feel like maybe something new. They want to try something new over there. And honestly, I would respect it a lot from Darche if he didn't re-sign him, because it's the easy way out, right? Just give him his contract, give him term.
Right.
It's not very creative. So I have respect really either way on this one. I do have to say, I don't love the idea of giving him term. I've really enjoyed the DeAngelo experience when he's on a one-year deal and he's playing like his life is on the line. And I know that's not how you want players to play or feel, but it's a businessman. And I just don't think that this is the type of player the Islanders should be locking up right now. So I'm really curious to see how it does play out. But I lean no, just because
I don't think he gets a term from the Islanders. I just think that's what he's going to go back to the Islanders and ask. And he deserves to ask that. I think if I'm the Islanders, it's a 2-year deal. Maybe you go 3, but you're lowering the AAV, because that's, again, the problem with the Islanders is that there's no one in the pipeline that could, they can't go to DeAngelo and say, well, in 2 years, X is going to be ready. There's no X. Mathieu's not, I don't think, an NHL guy. So DeAngelo's going to be like, well, where are your offense? If you don't sign me to a 3-year deal, who is playing defense for you in now and going forward. And that's a big question mark. That's why I mentioned Blankenberg. And of course, you could find rights. Maybe let Ethan Bear get a shot. But if you're letting Ethan Bear get a shot, Scott Mayfield, your second pairing defenseman, no. So the Islanders are in a weird spot, but I do think if DeAndre's back, it's probably a 2-year deal.
Yeah, you know who's got to be kicking himself? Adam Boquist, because you know what, he came in that like 2-3 week span, and he really did have a chance to like show that he can be in this role. Like these are the things he's supposed to be good at: puck moving, quarterbacking the second power play. But obviously, we just did not see enough from him. So it really up in the air. We'll see how that plays out. Next question is from Eric. Given the increase in mass in the East, what plans, if any, does the organization have to reduce the most alarming stat from last season, that Matthew Schaefer was the most hit player in the league? And good question, Eric. Creative one. But I just think he's playing less minutes next season. I think the Patrick Waugh, let's play him 30 minutes a night out of desperation because he didn't trust maybe a bunch of other defensemen to be out there. I don't think DeBoer is going to operate like that. And I think we find a more sustainable formula for success.
Yeah, I think minutes, I don't know how much down they're going to be. If the Islanders are trying to win, he's going to play a lot. But yeah, well, one, I think it's Schaefer understanding the speed of the NHL game. Maybe just better position is not taking as many hits, getting rid of the puck a little quicker. They obviously have Braden Shen here who will fight. That's 100%. Marchman's one of those guys where that's where I look at it as like, well, if they got Marchman and the term was acceptable, not only is he a guy that could be that guy, but he'd be on the ice with Schaefer because he'd probably be playing with Barzal. And again, we talked about like last year, everybody wanted that goon or the enforcer, right? And I pushed back on a lot because my mindset was that player is never going to be on the ice with Schaefer. And if that player is never on the ice, sure, he could chirp from the bench and be like, hey, I'll come on the ice and beat you or whatever. But if he's not out there in the moment, he's not jumping over the boards and fighting. So I think that doesn't work at all. You get a player that has talent that could be that guy, like a Marchman, that makes more sense. But yeah, I think it's going to be minutes. It's going to be handling Schaefer's minutes where he's not out there as much as he was. And maybe you see other players step up a little bit more. Now they say, you know what, Schaefer rookie year, he's going to get, the players are going to go after him. But maybe he earned more respect, to be quite honest, around the league. People don't know Schaefer. They want to get under the skin. He's getting all this attention. But you talk to everyone about Schaefer. I'm not saying people aren't going to try to hit him because he's a nice guy, but like at some point in the NHL, there is a respect factor. Like there are certain players that if they go in the board, behind the boards, whatever, behind the net in the corner, you're not going to light him up. Like maybe you give him a slash, but I just think Schaefer, he'll adapt where he's not going to be in spots where he's going to put himself, on the line where he's going to get slashed in the face or cross-secting the boards. Like he's so quick and shifting, he's only going to get better that I think he's going to limit how many hits he does take. But that being said, it's just learning, and DeBoer is going to really have to manage it, especially I think Bogner might be more important. And so Bogner handles the defense pairings, and obviously Waugh is telling what to do, and Waugh pretty much stay out of the way. But DeBoer and Bogner are really close. They're probably in the same wavelength with how they want to handle it. At the same time, an injury can happen whether you get slashed once or slashed 30 times. Schaefer's a competitor. It's not going to bother him at all. He didn't look at all during the year that he was fatigued or that he was being physically worn down. It's the NHL. It's how it is. You're a star. Players want to, players are going to try to slow. The only way to slow down players like Schaefer is by hitting them and slashing them and doing that stuff. I think it just comes with the territory. I'm not saying it should be overlooked. I think it's important. He has to stay healthy. But I think it's more about just playing less minutes will equal less hits against.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just think last year was almost like a special case of how much he played. And, I've seen like interviews of other players around the league talking about how much they respect Schaefer because he took all of the hits.
Right. He didn't stay down ever.
He wasn't looking at the reps after either. He took them. He knew his place in the league as a rookie. So those are some things he has working for him. But Ryan, his questions are, who is your quote unquote, no matter what guy? 2, a lot like Lynn, but if Lawrence or Cullen are available, who do you go with? Okay, so let's start with the first one. My no matter what guy is actually the player you mentioned before, Verhoff. If for whatever reason he's still 100%. On the board, I've seen the slippage too, and I don't understand it. If for whatever reason he's on the board, like at 9th, 10th, I would even consider trading up somehow, just because that would answer a significant need for this team. But between 13, I would prefer. I already said Lawrence, but I guess you could take it away there.
No, I think, I like Lawrence a lot. There's so many guys. There's no clear-cut number 13 pick. We said best player available before. There's so many players that fit what the Islanders need everything. Let's be clear here. They desperately need right-hand defensemen, but they need everything. You're trying to bolster a prospect pool that's on the rise. I do like Darche a lot. I really do. I think he's that power forward that the Islanders would love. Every team would love. Like, that's why I said Ottawa, getting him, like in Brady Tkachuk stuff, like that makes a ton of sense. But yeah, Verhoff falls, you take him, but at 13, I just think if the best player available is the right-handed D, you take that player. But if he's not a right-handed D, it doesn't matter. Take the best player available. I like Darche a lot. I really do. But I'd say anyone that falls out of the top 10 that's still there, whether it's Verhoff or somebody else, Bjork, like, again, if someone falls, I don't think so. Like, you just got to take those guys. It's hard to pick a name because we really don't know who's falling.
Yep. Okay. Next question is from Ian. With how much the Eastern Metropolitan has improved, how many teams do you think the Islanders are truly better than in the Metro? So let's start with the Rangers. That's the obvious one, I think. I'll go next with, it's hard to say right now, like on this day, like, because the Devils, like, they have the stars, but at the same time, their goaltending is just so suspect. I think their blue line is suspect. I don't know what the rest of their offseason looks like. So, you know what? I still give the Devils the edge there. When it comes to the rest of them, here's my problem with those odds from before. I'm actually going to pull it up just to refresh my memory. I see the Hurricanes, Capitals, and then I see 6 teams that anybody really, even including the
100%.
Anybody.
I'm not super high on Columbus. And if they have to trade Werenski, forget it.
Yeah,
yes, you'll get a haul back, but like you said, there are so many teams that are just not strong enough in the East, especially the Metro, that it's for lack of a better word, it's a crapshoot, which is why it was so close. It was so close to make the playoffs. So looking now, it's hard. Again, those are questions more so for when the free agency is done, training camp comes around, who's making which teams are better. But goaltending matters. It does. The Devils don't have it. To be honest, Carolina, yes, they're elite. They won a cup, and truly doesn't matter what they do. And of course, they're a better team than the Islanders. But who is their goalie next year? Is it Bussy? Is it Bussy? And is Bussy able to do what he just did? Because it's going to be really hard to do what he just did because it was tremendous. They like Kachekov a lot. The Rangers, Igor is great. And do they have a sourceful backup? Is Garand the guy? Columbus, always for me, like Jack Reeves, great, solid year. Like, right? Is he the guy? Philly, like you're talking about Vladar.
I'm not buying it with Philly at all. Like that, they beat the Penguins in the first round, which honestly makes me not buy the Penguins. And also, they're not going to bring back Mantha, who scored 30 goals last season. And they have Stuart Skinner in net. Their defense was very suspect. The offense, though, that was powerful. But I don't know. Is Chinikov going to score 25 goals again or whatever? It's just like so many. Every
move that Dubas made worked last year. Very hard for that. I mean, to be honest, look at the Capitals. Teams that go out and do what they're doing is, you want to see it. You want to see the teams try to improve and stuff. It doesn't usually work. Like, again, they got talent. Like, don't get me wrong. Talking Kyrou could both pot 30 goals next year, and they could have one of the best offenses in terms of overall goals, especially if Ovechkin comes back and scores 30 or something. All right. But, like, again, I don't know. And their depth, to me, is interesting. Their defense. But for me, like, when you have a guy like Sorokin, you're always going to be a hovering playoff spot, which means you're probably going to be at least 4 or 5 in the division. So, yeah, hard on June 25th to see where the Islanders would fall. But right now, I like them better than the Rangers. I do like them better than Columbus. Like them better than I do like them better than Philly. I just there's a lot of teams where you just don't know. But I don't think the Islanders are going to be as bad as people think they're going to be, even if they do nothing. Yeah. Because you're getting – fans hate this, and I'm going to say it. I know I'm saying it. But, like, you're getting back – a guy in Palmieri that you could not find a replacement for. You tried everybody. Not only is he an offensive goal scorer, not only does he crash the net, not only is he the best, probably long distance shooter you have on the team, he's really sound defensively too. He could play on the power play, he could play on the penalty kill, he plays in your top 6. That was an enormous loss the Islanders never filled. And if Palmieri doesn't get hurt, again, do the Islanders even go after Palat? Do the Islanders even go after Braden Shen? Like, this guy is, I think, yes, underpaid, but he's so good in all areas for you. And those are what wins you those close games. And that's what puts you in a playoff spot as opposed to not being in a playoff spot. So yes, I know if the Islanders saying, oh, Palmieri, Romanov back. And like, yeah, I know it's not the flashy stuff you want if you're an Islander fan, but especially Palmieri, he matters so much to the success of the team last year. Like, I think if he was healthy, they make the playoffs. I really do.
Yeah, he is an important player for them. And I know he might not be that important everywhere else, but he goes to the areas that not everyone is willing to go to, him and Anders Lee. He is just he's one of the smarter players I've watched, and honestly, one of my favorites because, I mean, we saw it when he tore his ACL and got a point on the same play by lifting someone's stick. Like, that is like leadership. That is how much he cares. Like, I just think he's a really good player to have around other young players. So I think he's really important to them. And I think you're right. I think if he stayed in the lineup last year, I don't think that they adequately replaced him. And it was kind of weird because you thought that it would be so simple. And it's probably not a great sign that he is that important, but it is what it is. And overall, we agree here because I just see 6 teams that really anybody can finish at the top of it. And it's like, I don't know, those odds are kind of crazy, but maybe they know something that we don't. Coach Jeff, next question here. Do we have any indication if Darche was in on Kyrou and if Kyrou would have agreed to come here? That's a you question.
Yeah. So yeah, there was interest. They had talked to the deadline. We know they had talked to the deadline. I was told they re-engaged following the end of the season. How crazy the phone calls got, I'm not sure. They had a base at the deadline. Maybe it was just simply kicking tires, and maybe the Blues told the Islanders, listen, if you're not willing to part ways with an Ekman or an Aitchison or an Yzerman or a Danny Nelson, all 4 guys, and you don't have, you have your first overall pick, but you don't have anything deeper. Maybe you want your 2027 first. Like, I don't think it ever got close to getting done with the Islanders. Do I think he would have waived? I do. We'll never know. He had a full no trade. He had that right, but I think he would have. That being said, it gets to a point where if you're not willing to trade not only your top prospects, but your top 4 prospects in a pipeline that has maybe 5 top prospects, it's hard to make deals if you're not going to do that. Now, again, I don't think Darche should be parting ways with those. If he believes those guys can be difference makers, like Yzerman's a huge question mark, but if he figures it out, is he a 40 goal scorer at the NHL level? Maybe. And It's crazy to think about, given, he has to be better defensively and all that stuff. But like, if he's that guy that you think could be that guy, why are you taking on a guy in Kyrou that could have that massive cap hit? And also older, when in a year or two, Yzerman could be in your lineup for much cheaper on his maybe the last year of his ELC and be a factor that fits more the Schaefer timeline than the Matthew Barzal timeline. So I think a lot of things have to happen for a trade to go through. I think Kyrou would have waived to join the Islanders, but I think you look at the package that Capitals were offering. He also has some ties to players on the Capitals. I just think it was a perfect storm for him to end up there. But yeah, I think the Islanders were involved. I don't know how close they got, but they certainly were involved.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to trade Cole Yzerman for him. I agree with you there. All right, Kenny from Isles in the Sound, which might have a different name now. Tough question. If someone offered you $1 million but said you had to choose one, are you taking Cole Yzerman one-timer off the shin or getting absolutely run over in the open ice by Kashawn Aitchison at full speed? No gear, just skates.
All right, I'll go first. I'm taking Kashawn Aitchison running me over because I'll probably get knocked out and not feel anything and then just wake up in the hospital. If I'm taking a one-timer from Yzerman off the shin, I'm feeling that in the moment. Maybe I pass out from the pain, but I'd rather I'd rather just wake up in the hospital than have to feel that the entire time.
I think I agree with you. The one-timer off the shin, like that would kill. Like, I don't know. You're probably right. We probably would be knocked out. I think
like Aitchison hits me and I just wake up 3 days later in hospital and I'm like out of it.
Yeah, you get to say like you survived a hit from Kashawn Aitchison. So I think that's what I'm going with. But what
shot to the shin, not only do I feel the pain in the moment, I probably feel it for a while and I'm on crutches and I'm a mess. Give me Kashawn Aitchison crushing me and knocking me out every day over Yzerman shot to the shin.
Yeah, I just lining up in front of a clapper like that. I don't know. I'll take the hit. So we got the next question here from Joseph. I say keep the pick and see what some of our young prospects have to offer. Eklund looks like a keeper. We can't get enough through trades now to turn us into a contender. I think Joseph answered a question instead of asking one. So I guess we'll skip that. DeFluffer, in any potential trade, assuming the Islanders are only giving up one top prospect forward and one top prospect defenseman, which would you prefer them to move out of Eklund, Yzerman, George, or Aitchison? Well, I think the first thing we have to do is take George out of this just because he's not in that class, right?
Right. As a top prospect?
Yeah, out of those three top prospects.
Oof.
For me, it's a no-brainer.
Well, sorry, it was Eklund, Aitchison, and Yzerman? Those are your three?
Yzerman, yeah.
And who would you move out of all of those three?
If you were upgrading and you had to pick one of them to upgrade the roster, who would you pick?
Yzerman.
Really?
Okay, so definitely not Eklund. Eklund's untouchable. I would say again, it's a hard question because you got to know what position you're acquiring to upgrade. If you're upgrading the forward group, you probably move Yzerman because you want Aitchison for the future when eventually Pelech moves on and that's Aitchison fills in there. But if you're upgrading your defense and you're getting a left-handed defenseman who is NHL ready now that could be in there forever, then you move Aitchison because you're not going to have a spot for him in the lineup. So I think it truly depends on who you're going after. I guess you're going to say Aitchison.
Yeah, 100%. And that's because it's just like a philosophy for me. The hardest things to find in the NHL are goal scoring and right shot defensemen and defensemen that are generational like Matthew Schaefer is. And here's how I look at it. Schaefer should be running the top power play for the next, 15 years on this team. And once again, just being able to find left shot defensemen, I find to just be a lot easier. And Aitchison and Yzerman, I think, are similar where they both have very high ceilings, but you never know what their floors. And Yzerman might be even more risky than Aitchison in that regard. But with what I've watched for the last 2 decades, I'm willing to take my chances more on the goal scorer. But if I had to pick one, it would definitely be Aitchison before the other two. Last question from Islanders France. Can the New York Islanders qualify for the playoffs next year? And can the Islanders win the Stanley Cup with Darche at the helm? Well, they can make the playoffs next season. I feel like we went in there. But can they win the Stanley Cup under Darche? It's going to be tough because
the answer is yes, they could.
Yeah, 100%.
I know fans hate it, like make the playoffs and just get in. But when you have every Cup winner needs a building, they don't need the elite goalie. It certainly helps. That's an argument for another day. But you have the defenseman. You have Schaefer. You have a dynamic offense, but you need to add more pieces to that. Like, yeah, Darche could do it. The question is, how long is Darche's tenure? How long is he allowed to do it? Can he turn this team into a Cup contender in a year and a half? No. 3 years, maybe? 4? 5? I don't know how long Darche is going to be given to do this. I mean, I'm sure Darche's going to get a pretty long leash, given that he knew what, the Islanders knew what he was taking over when he got hired with the contracts with Lou. I think next summer is a huge summer for him. We talked about guys coming off the books, and it's not crazy, but Palmieri comes off the books. Palat comes off the books. Certain guys, no trade clauses become modified. Like, if Darche could leave his mark, it'll be probably next summer when he can do all those things. But yeah, at that point, how close are you to a Cup contender? Because the Islanders do need to get that elusive. They need that goal scorer. No Cup winner wins without that guy. Now, again, in the playoffs, it's usually the depth guy that scores that big goal. And no one remembers his name in 10 years. Like, I look back to, like, Dave Bolland on Chicago. He's the one that scored that goal in front of the net. Like, that wasn't a Taves or a Kane or a Keith from downtown. It was Dave Bolland. Like, those are the guys that usually win you the Cup, but to get there, you need the elite guys. So I'm not sure how long it would take the Islanders to win the Cup. It really depends on how effective Darche can be in righting some wrongs and if they can get that guy. Again, it depends. If they're waiting for the Schaefer core, which is the Eklunds, it just seems like it'll take a while because you're probably 3 or 4 years until those guys are in your lineup full time every day. And then at that point, they gotta get the experience and stuff. So I think it's a challenge. Can they win it under Darche? 100%. Darche has to be employed long enough for those guys to really be given the opportunity.
Well, here's what Darche has working in his favor. In my lifetime, the Islanders have never fired a general manager that makes the playoffs. And also the Islanders have never had a player like Matthew Schaefer. So I think with Schaefer, that's like really the hope that like as a fan base we should have, because we've never had a player of this caliber. And it takes those types of guys usually to get over the top to win Stanley Cups. Like for the Panthers, it's Barkov. For the Knights, it's Eichel. The Hurricanes, I will say, they are a rare case where they don't have like that top 10 player in the league type of player. But
that's where we talked about coaching before. Like that's where coaching matters. And Brind'Amour failed. How many years did Brind'Amour fail with this ideology?
A whole lot of times.
And they finally get over the hump, but they're not in the finals without Brind'Amour.
No shot. No way. He's cemented himself to me as the best coach in the league, because I look at that roster and like it's really like they're no scrubs or anything like that. Like of course they're good players, but it is just shocking that they not only won the cup but went, what is it, like 16-3 in the playoffs. So
it was ridiculous.
Yeah, like I think Darche will have his chance just because you have Schaefer here, and it's going to take some very sharp managing though, because I feel like people look at this team, look at the Islanders, and they hire a new GM. This is a very unique general manager job, and let me say it like this: like it's the most success that this team has had in their franchise history. The general managers for both of those teams are cemented in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And it's because it's different. Like you don't get to get the top free agent on July 1st. It takes a lot of savvy drafting and a lot of trades. And the time period in which Darche took over for, it's kind of like you're in the middle of a retool. So as a rookie GM, it's going to be very hard just to make sure that you're making the right trades. And it's very important to me as a fan that like this deadline, we probably should, like, we can debate it all we want, but I'm kind of
there's nothing to debate. Darche failed. There's nothing to debate here. Let's be clear. And I've been called out on Twitter, and I guess I should answer this now. Like being so pro Darche, like, yeah, it failed. The Moose failed. It was a failure of a deadline because they didn't make the playoffs. My whole argument now is we can harp on that and every day tweet out Darche is done for the day and Darche sucks, or we can look forward because again, Darche doesn't get a pass for trying to make the playoffs. And I wrote about it in my article, I think on Sunday, and I got some questions on it. Like the plan was always to be a playoff team. Yep. Like that was the plan. In an evaluation, like every team wants to make the playoffs. There's no team that says we're going to be in last. As much as teams, they're tanking, all that stuff, like the value financially, but also mentally and all that stuff to make the playoffs is enormous. Now it hasn't landed the Islanders free agents and doing that, but you want to make the playoffs. You don't want to not make the playoffs. And where I think Darche got a little overzealous, the right word, I'm not sure, is like he looked at this roster come the deadline and said, how could I waste what Schaefer and Sorokin and Horvat even were doing that year? I got to try. Let me go get a former player that I had that in the playoffs, veteran guy where we're trading our fourth line every day. Palmieri, we tried so many guys, Holmstrom included, in the Palmieri role. It didn't work. I know Palat. Let me try to get Palat. We need a defenseman. Let me go and get Susie. Like, I commend him for trying because no team was ever selling. And I think this is your argument where you should have just stood pat. But no team is selling when you're in a playoff spot. Now, I think the standing pat part was maybe ownership had something to do with it. Hey, like, go for it. But number two is Darche is saying, if I get Schaefer into the playoffs and getting that experience, I got to try. And if I look at it here, here's this asset. I don't value too much that late first round pick, which is quote unquote essentially second. I don't value this. Like, the problem is you missed the playoffs, and now it's an absolute failure because now you're looking at what Kyrou gets or what guys in the market get. Not saying it would have mattered, but if you have that extra first round pick, I look at the Blues right now. They have 4 first round picks. They're going to use those picks to upgrade or move up in the draft. Like, could the Islanders now, hindsight, be involved in maybe more of these conversations if they had that pick or, had whatever? Of course. I mean, Darche, and also, like, Darche isn't oblivious. He knows that he knows he messed up in the sense that they didn't make the playoffs. Now, do I think it's on him? No. I think the team failed and I think they collapsed and not really much. Like, I don't think they missed the playoffs because of the moves Darche made. They just didn't help enough. And I think Schenn could still be effective, just not as a center. He cannot play center. He should be playing wing at this point. But I think everyone tries to be black and white with Darche. It's like, no, Darche could do what he did and still the right idea to go for where the team was at. It just didn't work. Like if they make the playoffs, we're not having this conversation.
We're not, no. And it's like at some point though, like we have to turn.
But why did they? But a question: why did they miss? It's not because of but it's not because of those three. Did they not help enough? Correct. And you look at the Soucy goal in Buffalo, where like everyone crapped on him because he didn't knock the puck out of midair. Like you watch that play. I know it's June 25th, and we're talking about a play from back in April, but like you watch that play. Yes, he doesn't catch it, but once he forces the forward behind the net, Soucy did his job. To be honest, I think it was Stefen and Horvat that failed in front. Again, let's call us like let's not only make it about the guys that he brought in. Like, and again, down the stretch, Barzal disappeared, Horvat disappeared, Sorokin struggled. Now, again, not putting a little blame on them, but they're more the reason why the Islanders missed the playoffs than the three guys that Darche brought in. But again, it's June 25th. It's time to move forward. And Darche moves on from Drouin. Maybe he can move Duclair. We'll see what he does with Palat. But like, it's all about going forward now. You can't. I know why people harp on the past because assets are not available anymore. But like, it's over. The deadline's done. The Islanders missed the playoffs. Darche is well aware that his moves did not work. Now you can root against Darche every day to fail, or you can root for Darche to learn a lesson in year one as a GM, learn that experience, say, okay, I tried that, didn't work. Next time around, let me not do that, and go forward. Because guess what? He's not being fired. So they every day crapping on Darche. Again, your fans have your opinions. I understand it completely. But give the guy, he's going to be here. So either you don't give him a shot and you just poo-poo everything that he does, or say, you know what? Darche learned a valuable lesson in year one as a GM. The team didn't get significantly worse with the moves he made. They still have Schaefer. They have a lot of young guys. He didn't trade any of your top prospects that he still has to either weaponize or use in the future on the actual team. So the Islanders aren't in a horrific spot. The deadline only stinks because the Islanders missed the playoffs. And maybe one of those assets, again, cap space isn't an issue unless the Islanders need that. Like, cap space is only an issue if you're getting that top guy and you don't have the cap space for him. The Islanders don't think they're in the market to get that guy this summer. They're fine. So everyone needs to calm down the cap space, calm down on the roster spots, and truly calm down on the assets they don't have, because it doesn't matter anymore. It matters moving forward is Darche is going to be great on what he does now, not on what he just did.
Yeah, I think a general manager that made the splashes he made this year at the deadline, it kind of just proves that he doesn't like to be sitting there doing nothing. And honestly, right now, I think that this has been a great learning experience for him in valuing those assets a little bit extra and thinking more long-term in the middle of the season, no matter what the cost is now. So I think it could be seen as a learning experience. And honestly, like from this offseason, I kind of wanted to see let's not just like rush into things like we kind of did at the deadline. Like, let's just like assess everything and don't get too like trigger happy. And I think right now, like he is like kind of proving like it might just be better not to make the move. And like, that's kind of what should have been done at the deadline. So I think he's learning, and there's no point in saying the Islanders should fire him because it's not happening. And the best thing you can do is just hope.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're just hope the guy learns.
Root for I mean, this is just my take. If you're an Islander fan, you want the team to do well, root for Darche to become a really good general manager.
Yeah.
There's no point in rooting against him because it's only going to make, again, negative. People will love to be like, oh, I told you so, or this guy stinks. They shouldn't have like fired Lou and all that stuff. Like, root for the guy to succeed. Why are we rooting for the guy to fail? Yes, maybe he failed the deadline and you didn't like his move and you don't like the direction or you think he has no direction. But he's not going anywhere. So root for him to be better and make the right decisions going forward. Like, to be honest, right now, we don't know how much is happening behind the scenes and that Darche missed out on. He's not selling. If he was selling, he would have sold already. I think he's actually trying to improve the team and buy. Now, when you don't have the assets and all that stuff, great. But, we'll never know. But Islander fans might be like, they asked for Tuck or they asked for Kyrou. Islander fans would have ripped him a new one had he made probably either move. For Tuck,
especially, I think the Kyrou one, it would have been tough to swallow having 0 first-round picks, but I would have gotten behind him for it. The Tuck one, I also think I would have. Here's my thing. I might be more of like a unique fan, but I just like watching good players. And for this team to acquire top 6 talent, I know it takes a whole lot. Like getting Bo Horvat a few years ago was really insane. Like I just didn't see that coming. So I probably would back him no matter what if he gets a player at that potential. But I'm also not going to bury the guy for not wanting to have 0 picks in the first round this year. So once again, honestly, just gotta hope he learns.
And if he does nothing and fans are going to complain, like doing nothing if you trust your prospect pool and you think, okay, Eklund's making the team, like let's say we're in Darche's head and he goes, Eklund makes the team at a camp. We're going to play him in the top 6. I'm not going to go and spend money on a top 6 forward, and I'm going to bring this guy in. I'm focused on the Schaefer timeline. I want to be competitive with Barzal and I want to win with these guys, but my focus has to be on that. You know what? I'm not going to move Adam Pelech because, for better or worse, if I move Pelech, guess who's playing more minutes next year? Schaefer. So I think there's so many things that go more involved in standing pat is more, again, it goes back to, if they stay pat, it goes back to my point where Darche's plan all along was to develop youngsters, whatever, and keep those prospects. And he just went for the playoffs in the hopes of making the playoffs in a crappy division where he should have made the playoffs. And it didn't work. But like, I don't think it changes going forward. Like, I have to add this summer now because I added the deadline. The two things aren't exclusive. I added the deadline to make the playoffs. Didn't make the playoffs. I'm not just going to add for funsies. I still believe in the prospect pool. I still want to keep our prospects. I'll take you know what, that I get from the deadline, but I'm not going to do that again. I was literally doing it at the deadline because the playoffs were there, and why not? And again, people could argue that, but
you brought up this is going to be the last point, but with Adam Pelech, there's been some eagerness within the fan base to trade him after seeing the return on Bowen Byram, and I thought about it. And I understand why fans think that he might get a significant return, why they would want to trade him. But I got to say, I see less good coming from trading him than keeping him. And it's because he's not the type of player, like the player he is like a dying breed in the NHL because they value so much with puck moving and point producing. And the defensemen that are worth the high-end assets, maybe like a Byram, Pelech's not that type of player, and it's more likely that he's actually underrated around the league and that they wouldn't get a great return. And, and then you put more on Schaefer's plate, and I don't think Romanov, George...
we just talked about it, too. Yeah. Putting more, taking less, he gets hit more, playing more minutes. That's how he'll get hit. If you trade Pelech, the Islander fans have to understand that they will be probably not a playoff team, and they'll be worse defensively for a team that was already bad defensively. So you trade Pelech, you're putting even more pressure on Sorokin. You're putting more pressure on Romanov coming back from the injury that he had to be more of the guy. You're then putting in an Isaiah George, maybe you're putting an Isaiah George in a role that, maybe he's not an everyday NHL guy. So like, there's so much more to just trading Pelech to get the assets back. I don't think they get back with Byram. Byram is younger. He's an offensive defenseman. He's a number 1 defenseman. Did I say he was younger? Right? You trade Pelech, could you get a first-round pick plus? Probably. For a team like Toronto or someone that needs a shutdown defenseman to get to that next, yeah, sure. You're not getting, first off, Chicago overpaid. I mean, Byram will be the one that really proves to us if it was an overpay or not. Like if they go on to win a cup or he becomes the number 1 guy, sure. To me, that was such an just draft at 4. Draft the defenseman at 4, who's going to be so much cheaper. I don't know, basing any package off that to me is a ridiculous mindset because I think is an overpay. But yeah, you lose Pelech, it impacts you more than just not having Pelech. It impacts every other facet of your lineup. Again, too, more pressure on Schaefer, more pressure on Romanov, more pressure on forwards to get back, more pressure on Sorokin, more pressure on DeBoer not having a reliable. You know how important it is to a coach to have a reliable guy? Now, I get it. His value may never be higher. I just weigh if his value may never be higher, but we get rid of him, now we're going to be much worse, and are we okay with being that? Like, again, if Aitchison had played already a year in Hamilton, and you said, you know what, he's ready, and this was this summer, this could be the conversation next summer. And I think it'll get to that point where once Aitchison's ready, Puck's got to go. If you believe Aitchison, because Romanov's not being moved unless his no-trade clause kicks in next July. That's a conversation, but Romanov's younger than Pelech, and if you're catering to that, next summer, if Aitchison proves ready, then Pelech goes. I don't think it has to happen this summer. And also next summer, when does is it modified for Mayfield and Pulock next summer, I believe?
I believe
From
so.
full?
I could check.
So again, so I think next summer is really where you'll see movement on the back end and the forward group. But yeah, moving Pelech to me, unless you're getting an offer that you can't refuse, I don't know. And again, too, like you mentioned, he's not a position that's really coveted around today's NHL.
Yeah. He's an underrated player and one that you're not going to get the return that warrants you being just so much worse defensively. And you'll be correct.
So much worse.
They both become modified in the 2027-28 offseason. So yeah, after next season, they're both modified. I actually didn't even know that. I thought they were full.
That's why you had me on the show, man.
Yeah.
No, but it's hard to move. Like if out of the three defensemen we just named, Pelech, Kulak, Mayfield, which one's more likely to move? It's Pelech because he doesn't have full trade protection. But again, you have to be ready to be much worse defensively, and in a division where you still can make the playoffs while retooling and playing young guys. You don't have to move him this summer. You just hope that he is able to stay healthy, because if not, then that's when you run into problems.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Stefen, thank you for joining me today. You guys can find him at the Elmonters. It will be in the description of the episode. Let us know who you think the Islanders should take at 13, and we hope you enjoyed. Thank you again, Steph.
No, thanks so much for having me, man.